Hello, my name is Ann Ricker. I am the Principal and Managing Director of Ricker Cunningham. Together with my partner Bill Cunningham, we are redevelopment specialists who do quite a bit of urban renewal work throughout the state, and this will be upwards of our perhaps 10th, maybe 15th assignment for the city of Lakewood and the Lakewood Urban Renewal Authority. This evening, what we're going to be covering is an overview of the Bend at Lakewood mixed-use community urban renewal plan that we prepared. It was one of three documents that are required by the statute in order for City Council to consider creation of an urban renewal authority. The other two documents being a condition survey and the third, a series of impact reports that we prepare for each of the taxing entities that have some sort of a presence or levy a mill within the proposed boundaries of the urban renewal area. The focus tonight is specifically just on the plan, and the reason for that is that planning commissions, planning and zoning commissions within communities, as per the statute, play a somewhat different role than your typical, what you would think of as a community planning effort, like a comprehensive plan or a corridor plan. While it's called a plan in the context of urban renewal, the plan is really very much more a financing document. It talks about the kind of resources that can be used and the kind of improvements that will be made, and then the statutory powers of the authority to implement the plan. It is light from a comparative standpoint on, zoning issues, land use issues, things like that. It's not regulatory. It's not a policy document. It is strictly a description of how necessary improvements will be made in the area, how private investment and public investment will be directed to accomplish an end. And as I mentioned in the statute, it specifically says that the role of the Planning Commission and or Planning and Zoning Commission in any one community that's considering adoption of an urban renewal plan, they need to take a look at it from a very specific window, which is it going to, or attempt to, is it intended to advance the vision of the community as expressed in those other documents, in those policy and regulatory documents, that this should be in furtherance of that, advancing those documents. So we're just basically, what the statute's saying is they just want to make sure that any community plans line up, including urban renewal plans. So what you see here is on the slide, the second slide, presentation outline, is basically the areas that we're going to cover tonight as it relates to the urban renewal plan document. Very briefly, just by way of background, as I mentioned, my partner Bill Cunningham and I have been doing work in the arena of urban renewal and redevelopment for I think it's over 35 years now. We established our firm together in 1993 after working in international real estate, and have focused quite a bit of our efforts, particularly in Colorado, around urban renewal. And you can see our credentials here, everything from serving on the board of Downtown Colorado Inc., that is an advocacy entity for Urban Renewal Authority, as well as Downtown Development Authority, special districts, and that, to having testified before the state legislature, and we have a number of documents that we've published and or presented throughout the state. The Bend at Lakewood mixed-use community urban renewal plan, it's a mouthful, but as you can see from the map here, this is the area, and it is, as we say, it includes two legal parcels comprising just under 60 acres, as well as any adjacent rights of way, or not the case here, but it can be when you have rights of way or other improvements running within those parcels. Basically, you're really looking at the boundaries and anything within it. So as you can see here, this area, this proposed area, generally is located in the southwestern quadrant of West 6th Avenue or US Highway 6 and Union Boulevard. It's all within the city of Lakewood. And for general reference purposes, it's located due west of the former Federal Center campus. Some of the general descriptions of the area that we've included in the plan, and these largely speak to recognizable, I would say, like plan areas, as you all as a community have identified in some of your policy documents, comprehensive plan and that, as well as small area plans. But within and adjacent to the subject parcels that make up the area is the Union Boulevard corridor. I mentioned the Denver Federal Center campus to the east, St. Anthony Medical Campus and all the associated buildings are located to the south. Obviously, this is an area that's referred to as one of the premier office concentrations in the western portion of the Denver region, and then it's surrounded by a series of targeted priority redevelopment and infill opportunities in this location and vicinity within the city, primarily, or in addition to some of the ones we mentioned, the Federal Center Station neighborhood. Really for reference for people that aren't as familiar with urban renewal, the definition we've provided here is defined by the act and or the urban renewal statute or law. Many people equate the term blight with urban renewal, and I always like to kind of preemptively mention that is a legal term. A qualification of blight or the presence of blight within an area is based on meeting a certain threshold of observable or identifiable conditions, physical conditions within an area that is being proposed. And if the threshold is met, which bottom line is the presence of 5 factors to be eligible for a designation, then it goes to City Council and those findings are presented, and City Council makes the ultimate finding. Our work is to present them with the technical information. We can make a recommendation to the authority. They then can make a recommendation to council to make that finding. Very important fact we want to mention here, though, while that is kind of the most basic description of whether an area can qualify as the presence of 5 of, as you'll see in the statute, if you look at it, 11 factors. When you have an area that is owned and no matter how many property owners and or business interests might be in that area, if they voluntarily request this designation, so we refer to it as a voluntary district, then the statute says there only needs to be one of those factors present. And just for your all's information, despite the 5 or the 1 threshold, based on the work that we conducted, we found the presence of 9 of these 11 factors present in the proposed area. The urban renewal plan, when you look here, we've got an outline here of the major topics that are covered. In some sense, it does look like what you might expect from a policy document, a community plan, like a comprehensive plan or that. But when you really get into it, you'll start to see that it's more what I described earlier in terms of a financing document. It outlines basically how certain investments, public and private, will be implemented in alignment with existing policies and regulations of the city, in this case, the city where it's located, Lakewood, and then what powers and resources they will have available to them that they can then use to implement and advance the vision in the area. Um, what if you've read the urban renewal plan, what you'll find, at the risk of reading to you, is that the Bend at Lakewood mixed use community urban renewal plan, that's the very long version, is referred to both as the plan or the urban renewal plan. It was prepared for the City of Lakewood and Lakewood Reinvestment Authority. Quick note here, urban renewal authorities or reinvestment authorities, those are the same thing, and they are really the implementing entity on behalf of the city. Even though, in my experience, in our experience, the city, the reinvestment authority, and planning commission often work hand in hand, assuming their traditional roles in a planning effort, but bringing in the reinvestment authority to address some of the financing matters. But they really do move forward together to implement the plan and the priorities of the plan. And as we say here in the preface, that the entity, as we said, the authority, will be the administrator and implementer of the plan, and everything that we've identified in terms of a power or authority is as per the statute. Nothing exceeds what is allowed for, and we always attempt, while there might be a gambit of authorities or powers they can have, we always try and keep that narrow, tailored to the community and what we can interpret from those documents and other resources in terms of their philosophies around implementing redevelopment projects proactively, reactively, whatever that might be. And so we make every effort to customize as much as is reasonable each plan that we prepare. You'll see here, and you heard an earlier reference to the rail station. That comes up quite a bit, given the fact that the two subject parcels are zoned mixed-use core transit. So the city has clearly laid out priorities to advance perhaps a comparatively higher level of density of a mix of uses, commercial and residential, non-residential, in and around station areas. Always a good land use practice, because you're trying to maximize the use of those, what can be very expensive, but regions serving transportation services. And so by concentrating, you're essentially recouping some of that significant investment by co-locating private uses around them. So this project, the proposed Bend project, really reflects every element of what you all, the city, hopes to accomplish in a mixed-use core transit area. Within the plan, you will find that the principal objectives, we've listed several, but one thing that will be the same from one urban renewal plan to another is, number one, that the first objective needs to be to mitigate any of those adverse conditions. We talked about the blighting factors. If you take time to read those, you'll notice those are things that, were you a property owner, were you a business owner, and or both, that there's conditions in an area that can adversely impact you, whether they can be, for instance, environmental contamination, so emitting uses, whether that's water or air, it can be noise, it can be slopes, steep slopes, so that runoff creates dangerous and or adverse conditions for properties and that. So number one, and this goes back to that first document, that condition survey, the goal needs to be to mitigate and or remove those adverse conditions. That's number one. Number two, and this is in the statute, is to advance the goals and objectives of the community. And again, that's the purview of the Planning Commission. That's what we're here tonight, is to make sure that we have aligned all goals and objectives and vision of this plan with those of the larger community. And then additional objectives, there are more than these, but I can just generally tell you that they reference completing necessary capital improvements, whether those are infrastructure and or utilities, and then furthering economic growth. And in the context of Lakewood's community and policy documents, there's quite a bit of discussion, not just on primary jobs and job creation and that, but stability, stabilizing existing neighborhoods, maintaining that character, and providing for residential product types for residents of different stages of life, incomes, and needs. The Lakewood Moving Forward Comprehensive Plan Vision Statement, I wanted to make sure I mentioned here right off the bat that, yes, this was 2025, and we're very aware that you've been working on 2040. When we initiated this project, this was the plan that was in place. This was the plan that was in place when we were drafting the plan in that, and therefore, and again, as per the statute, we reference that document, but there's a all-encompassing statement that we include where we say this plan it is our intent to make sure that it reflects all the goals, objectives, policies, vision of the existing comprehensive plan, but we add a statement that says, and all future amendments. So there's an intent, and therefore, if there arises an instance where something might seem inconsistent, I don't think so, because we've had the opportunity to review, various drafts of that document that might impact and or relate to this project. And there might be some nuances where something's become a little bit higher priority, but they seem to us to be very in alignment and continuing some very common themes. Again, neighborhood stability, housing, and that. We continue here on this slide, again, with some of those elements of the vision from the 2025 document. Innovative, sustainable, again, an emphasis on affordable housing within mixed-use projects. We pull out some additional references that specifically speak to this project, mention of employers, residential, whether it's mixed use or multi-use, kind of co-locating in the same area, references to transit. We've got those and referenced here, but also in greater detail in the appendix of the plan, and growth areas. We also, and this is redundant a bit with what we talked about earlier, but we also mentioned the fact that the two subject parcels are located within identified growth areas or targeted investment areas of the city. Union Boulevard, Denver, Federal Center campus area, obviously some of the growth area that involves Union Boulevard and that. Also, we've pulled out some specific goal language here, again, related to Union Boulevard and how the city wants to see the area grow as the Denver Federal Center and in the vicinity, properties in the vicinity of that take on its next role within the community, and also how it's then reflected in the land use plan. And then finally, talking about, again, more of the same, but the relationship of properties in the vicinity of this area and how they should build on redevelopment of the Federal Center while still accomplishing some of those larger goals that have to do with neighborhood and mixed use. The approach to implementation, and this is fairly vague. We only mention, or reference 4 items here, but I think the vagueness is what is warranted explaining that, there was a day decades ago when urban renewal plans would get very specific, but as per the statute, these plans can live for 25 years. That's as long as incremental resources can be pulled based on, from new investment in an area. And that's a long time. In Colorado, that's, almost 2 real estate cycles. And we found that those plans were too specific. They might have been helpful maybe for the first decade or something, or maybe the first real estate cycle. But as you all have witnessed, real estate changes, retail changes, types of office, whether we office at home or office at work, those things change. And we found that they were too restrictive. And so we try and keep them, find that sweet spot between explaining what the goals are, what we want to accomplish in the area, how we plan to do it, but generally the tools that we will consider, but always trying to be as specific as possible when it comes to the actual implementation, only using what is necessary to advance projects. And so that's that fine balance we're trying to strike. We we mentioned this here, and I referenced it earlier. There's all kinds of parties that come together in advancing an urban renewal plan. As we mentioned, the Reinvestment Authority, City Council, Planning Commission. Again, we've explained that, but also not necessarily mentioned here, but hopefully it's self-evident, is the private sector. One of the things about urban renewal areas is that they rise and fall on successful public-private partnerships. They need each other. Things aren't happening, I would say more than theory. The reality is that reinvestment is not happening in an area because there are obstacles, and they can be all different kinds and different number. But the goal is to bring the private sector in and say, are you willing to take a risk in this area if we're willing to work with you to try and eliminate some of those obstacles? So this basically just describes what everyone's role is. And then finally, just for reference, these are some of the important dates to keep an eye on. If you are property and or business interest that's in this area, and there's some guidelines for how far you reach out to send actual invitations or receive a postcard about public hearing dates where the plan will be considered. Regardless, there will be public notices in the paper, just like any other plan. So we're just mentioning them here, but this won't be the last time you'll be notified of a meeting having to do with this proposed plan area. And that's it, and we'll be available for questions. Thank you.